There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Books on Fire. We're a podcast that uploads new information about an independently published author with an outstanding and award-winning book every Tuesday. I'm Rita Mills.
And I'm Sandy Lawrence. And here at Books on Fire, we spotlight independently published authors across all genres.
Our guest today is Patti Lee. She came in with a 2023, so she was an Ember Award winner, our finalist. The Ember Award focused on books that were published between 2019 and 2023, and the books published in 2024 are the Fire Awards. So that's where the name Fire and Embers Awards comes from, just so everyone is kind of clear on this. So let's talk about your book. Tell us a little bit about your award winner, Patti.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me, Rita and Sandy. I really appreciate the opportunity. So between February and November was a book. I started it in 2019. And it was a little journey to get it published, which it was published in 2022, as you had just said, Rita. And it's essentially a love story between a couple that has been maybe a little too complacent in their marriage, and then something happens with Alan, the husband, and it triggered something in Layla, the wife, the two main characters. And I don't want to give away too much about the story, but it's essentially like I said, a love story gone. It didn't go wrong. It just had some bumps. A love story with some bumps.
Well, everybody loves a love story.
And especially one that's really true to life.
I have read quite a few reviews. I try not to read the reviews too much because sometimes, some reviews, I appreciate every single one. I appreciate every review because it does give me some time to some feedback for myself. So how I can improve as an author. But the majority of the reviews say that it's very, very lifelike. It's very true to something that might happen in their life or a friend of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So where did the idea for this book come from?
Well, it's interesting. So the book, when I started writing this book, it was supposed to be a kind of a campy take on marriage, which is what the book that I'm finishing up now ended up being. Because when I started this between February and November, I was headed in this direction. Like I was headed to the north, and when I started writing, the characters took it to the south. When I started writing, the characters really took on a life of their own, and they changed the story that I intended to have.
When I first saw the title, I thought, no. She's got it backwards. It should be November to February. And then I got a little farther into the book. So
it all makes sense.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do base their stories on a real person. Is that true of yours, or is this just one that you considered and thought about?
Well, again, the story started out a little bit like a kind of a tongue-in-cheek book about marriage and how spouses sometimes get on each other's nerves or don't always live up to what they say they're going to do, especially after a marriage of 20 years or something like that. And once I started writing, this character built herself essentially. So I think Layla is everyone. Layla isn't me. Layla isn't, married down the road. Layla is a little bit of everyone. So Layla isn't based on any one particular person. Alan, same thing. That character is not based on any one particular person. And then there's Mel. In this book, we have the perspective of Mel, who is the other woman in this love triangle, we'll say. And she, again, not based on any other person. She actually I was in the shower one day and she came to me, I wasn't even going to include her in the book. And I like this, the name came and everything just fell into place with that. Again, not basing it on any specific person. I think it's a little bit of everybody.
Well, did you do any research in the form of talking to other people about their marriages and what worked and what didn't, and the same type scenario?
I absolutely did do. I didn't do like like notebook research, but I absolutely did ask a lot of questions. I scoured the internet. I read books. I got some, and of course I'm coming in. I'm married 35 years myself, so I have some perspective on a long-term marriage and what it looks like, what it could look like. So again, the book, and I had to do a lot of research in specific pieces of the book. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but I didn't have experience with a number of things that have happened in this book. And so, yeah, research definitely came in handy there. I love the internet. Oh my gosh. I love forums where, you can kind of, it's kind of like, peeking into somebody else's life, and I can get some information. And then it was very helpful for sure.
That's awesome. So I had been married 25 years, and so something very similar. I have not read your book. I would definitely plan to, but I did read about him first, seeing him, meet someone else and go. So I didn't have that experience, but I did find some letters and some things where I could see he was seeing somebody else on the side, and well, ours did not last. I mean, I tried it for about 4 years after that, but he wasn't happy and I wasn't happy, and nothing we did seemed to work. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to get this to work. I'm going to go live by myself and have my own life. And I did get married again, but it was quite a bit later, about 12 or 13 years later. So, and now I've been married over 20 years to this person. So I tell everybody, I've been married over 50 years. It just wasn't all to one person.
It's true. And, in a long-term marriage, especially when you get to, maybe kids have left the house, or maybe there was a job change or a life circumstance had changed. And, one spouse will grow in one direction and the other spouse maybe doesn't grow in a direction, or maybe each spouse wants it like you, Sandy, you wanted it to work. You worked on it for 4 years, and as much as you might want it to work, it doesn't always happen that way. And that's unfortunate, but it puts you in a better place. It sounds like. So.
It did. Absolutely. It absolutely did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my husband passed in 2005, and everybody wants to know, when are you going to get married? Why haven't you gotten married again? Well, I haven't found a whole lot out there worth marrying, to be very blunt. But he and I were best friends for 10 years. We worked together, and there was nothing really going on in that 10-year time frame. But it helps to become best friends with someone before you marry them. And we managed to make it to 24 years and we had one fight, and we broke furniture and plates and stuff like that and got it out of our system. And that was like 2 years into the marriage. And we got back together after about 3 or 4 months. I moved out.
Yeah.
And, never had a harsh word after that. So
that's amazing. I might be hitting you up, Rita, for some story fodder for another.
I got some. The first two they lasted 2 years apiece, and I knew it wasn't worth sticking out and going to it, or staying in the marriage. So if it's not working, get out of Dodge, man.
Right. And, or, again, like Alan and Layla, they had, conversations. And I think communication is such a big deal in a marriage.
It is.
And if each spouse doesn't communicate in the same way or in a way that works for the other spouse, there's going to be some challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're working on another book that will be published this year.
Oh, well, that's hope.
So are you working with James on publishing this book as well?
I haven't gotten him the synopsis yet, but that's something that I'm working on. But yeah, I had been working. I started it right after I finished between February and November. I'd given myself a little bit of time, and I knew like this is the book I wanted to write in the first place. So I already knew where things were going to go and how they were going to go. But whenever you start writing something, especially with characters that they really do take on a life of their own, and they really do take things in a different direction sometimes. But this book went in the direction I expected it to go in for the most part. Yeah, so I started it right after I finished between February and November, and then I kind of put it on the shelf. And writing is tough. Publishing is tough. Getting your work out there is tough. And I'm not I'm more of an introvert. This isn't like, this is out of my comfort zone to do things like this. So, and I just put it on the shelf for a little bit, and a hot minute really. And then I took it back down after quite a few months, and I just did another pass through and a couple more edits. And now I'm finishing up, you go through every chapter and just double check this and double check that and make sure that the end of one chapter kind of will leave the reader hanging a little bit. So that's about where I am now. But I would say I'm 99% done. And the name of the book is Tanya, We Have a Problem. That's another thing. This title had been going in my brain for so long. I'd switched up titles, I think 4 times, but I like this one. This one, when I saw it, I was like, yeah, I think I'll do this one. So yeah, Tanya, We Have a Problem.
I've worked on many projects that the title didn't come about until right before it went to press.
And it's possible that James or whoever will come up and just say, hey, listen, I don't like that title. We're going to do something different with that. And that's the way it goes. Especially if it's going to sell the books, if it's going to pull the reader, if it's going to create some traction, then that's.
So is Athena helping you with this one as well?
I haven't submitted it to James and Athena yet. So Athena edited the last one. And that was a really seamless process. She was super easy to work with. There wasn't, I'm not like patting myself on the back, but she said there wasn't a lot to do editing wise. So that was helpful. But this one, we'll see what happens with this one. Cause this one's a little longer. The other one was a little shorter book. This one is, we're looking at about 72,000 words. And the other one I think was like 64 or something.
What was there a reason why you went with a small press? Did you try the traditional route, finding an agent and then going to one of the big 5, or you just went small press period?
Well, I'm new to this. So again, I came into this whole writing business in my 50s. I didn't think, I'd never thought I'd be a writer. I was always a voracious reader. I was reading all the time. I would read like a book every 2 days. Like I was a big reader. Never thought I would write a book. And, I tell you, once you get to a certain age, so in my 50s, I started painting also. So there's a picture behind me. I was just like, hey, my mother was a painter. I needed a picture for over my sofa in the living room. And I didn't want to spend $300 on something because not that it's not worth it, but it's a lot of money. So I was like, well, I'll just buy a canvas and I'll just, paint something. And that's what I did. And, I think you get to a certain age and you're like, I'm going to try this. And so I often think in my head, like behind somebody in a coffee shop or in the grocery store, and I make up stories in my head about who these people are, what they're doing,
I do that.
what their name is. It's just fun to do. And then I just said, I'm going to write a book. I think I'll write a book. And so that's how that started. It wasn't something that I was very aware of. And then once I wrote the book, and of course, the naive writer in me, I think it was, 20,000 words or something. And I sent it to my best friend. I'm like, oh, I wrote a book. And she read it and she was like, this is amazing. I'm so proud of you. This is so great. And of course I think, oh, this is amazing. She thinks it's great. It's great. It's wonderful. And then I did a lot of research on what to do, how to get a book published, who do you go to? And so I learned how to query. And I remember I sent one of my first queries I sent to an agent, and they gave me back some really good. I was, first of all, realized later on, I would have been surprised if I'd known to have been surprised, but she sent me some feedback within a few days and told me, some really, really good, she gave me some really good advice. The first thing was, research your genres and make sure you have your word count matches your genre, because your word count is not, this isn't a book. So super helpful and so kind. And she said, keep writing, keep trying until you've done it, keep going, keep doing it. So that's what I did. I just kept trying. So I didn't really send a lot of queries out, to be honest, Rita. I think I sent out, that's another thing too. I queried publishers and agents at the same time, which again, I realize now I probably shouldn't have done. After doing some more research, that's not something that is common, I guess. And I had a couple of bites from a couple of different publishers, and I thought about self-publishing also. And then I heard back from Rock Hill Publishing, and I really liked the conversation I had with James and, what they would do for me as an author, which I think is great. And that's why I ended up going with James with Rock Hill Publishing. They're so kind to work with, so helpful. And, they, in the beginning, I learned a lot about how to promote a book. Which is something
that's the key. You got to sell those puppies once you get them printed.
Exactly. And I'm not sure so the first year, so it was published in November of 2022. And of course I'm thrilled, I'm ecstatic, because I have this book that was published. And, the first quarter, I sold maybe a couple hundred books, and I was, this is great, because that's great. And then, as the quarters go on, it's like, okay, you've sold eight books this quarter. And I, having conversations with James, I'm like, I know, James, I have to get out there and promote. It's just out of my comfort zone to do that. So, but I'm going to have to, that's just how it is. But somehow, some way, and I don't know how this happened, but about a year ago, between February and November got into some kind of algorithm in somewhere, because I've sold a ton of copies in the last year. I've sold over 1,000 copies in the last year, which
wow,
it's not, New York Times bestseller stuff, but certainly I hadn't been promoting, and I don't know how. Somebody read it and then something happened. So I think that with some more work on my end, and with some more work with maybe a publisher on the publisher's end, we can
So, Patti,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but of the 1,000+ books that you sold, do you kind of know, were they mostly ebooks or mostly print or combination or?
So the quarterly reports, the publisher sends reports. And so the majority of them are ebooks, and a lot of them are from like Australia over,
That's great.
And across the pond. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. And so it's just such an interesting experience. The whole thing from start to finish is just, and like I said, I love to read the reviews and hear what people have to say. And I remember I was speaking directly face to face with someone who had read the book, and she was just like, I do not like the ending. I'm not going to give away too much, but she was just like, I think that's not what would happen. And I was like, oh, tell me about it. Like why? Like what do you think would have happened? What do you think should have happened? And she gave me her idea of what could have happened and what made more sense to her. And that's always interesting to hear the different perspectives about how people read a book and what they expect is going to happen, and then that doesn't happen, and how in their own life and how their own perspective, how that's going to affect what they think of the book.
Well, I'm on a writer's Facebook group, and I rarely get on it because my vision is so poor. But there was a quote come across. I was telling Sandy about this last week, that someone had seen on a review of a book, and it said something about the character development was pretty good, but it was just like she was making it up as she went along. And I thought that was so cool.
And true.
Yeah, and true. But most authors are introverts. There's no doubt about that. They get into themselves and into their creativity and their talent, and that's where their gift comes from, to be writing. And Sandy, her expertise is marketing, and I know she's had more than one client that I'm just not getting out there.
Yes, I definitely have. There's just something about being out there face to face that some authors just won't do. And especially when you go to some of these not book clubs. Book clubs are wonderful. I love them, and I think that they'd be great for even the most the author that is the most introverted still would go to, because it's like a smaller group usually, and you get to know people, and I love being part of that. But they're also, and I've taken some of my clients to like book shows where they would have, like, and sometimes you could buy a booth or whatever the format is. And some of them are just like, and I have one client that after one time, he said, "Don't ever ask me to do that again."
So
and actually, he now does a lot of podcasts, and he's actually the author we're going to be interviewing in a little while this afternoon, because when I first worked with him, he was like, "Nope, don't ever take me to that again." And so it's just, some people don't want to get out of their comfort zone at all. They want to stay home. But we live like you said, you love the internet. We live in the world of the internet. I mean, with social media and the many different types of social media there are, especially if you count TikTok and some of those, there's no way that you can't reach your target market. But the secret is knowing who is your target market and where are they. And that's one of the things I always, emphasize with clients, is know who's going to read, who is interested in reading your book. So I love that, and I love your story, and I'm really excited about buying the book and taking it with me to Mexico to read while I'm there.
Well, I saw on your, I think it was your author page on Amazon, it said you have for people to go to Instagram and I think Twitter. Do you do a lot of social media?
I did back in 19, 20, 21, 22. And I'm just, social media is really hard for me. It's I was going to ask you, Sandy, what do you do about your authors that kind of going out socially is difficult for them, is a challenge for them? Like, how do you still get that to happen?
Do it for them.
You do it for them. Yeah. So that's something I need to figure out, because I think too, social media is kind of a time suck for me.
It is for me too, believe me.
Everybody.
Okay. And I want to be, for me as an author, I may have a social media for personal, but I never go on it. It's just not something that I do. And I want whatever I'm posting to have some kind of meaning or relevance, or, I don't want to post just to post. And I think that's the hardest part for me, because I want to be thoughtful about it.
Well, and you have to be careful about that, because nobody wants to hear just buy my book. I've got a great book.
Right.
I mean, that just gets old to anybody. So to me, social media is a little bit about you. It's like the 80-20 rule, if you're familiar with that. It's like you want to talk about 20% about you and 80% about something else that they're interested in. The main thing is for you to build that connection with the audience, which is your social media.
Right.
And the more you can build that audience and build a relationship that has nothing to do with your book, then, they see the book, and anybody that knows anybody that has a similar experience to what you have with Alan and I forgot her name. Layla. Would be interested in reading the book. And so that's the thing, is just, you can always just mention, well, here's another person that just like my book, here's another couple that's going through a rough spot. And everybody knows that after 20 years, it's like my granddaughter who lives with me told me the other day, because when I see you and Grandpa talking, I'm like, what do they have to talk about after 20 years together? It's like, how can you have anything to talk about? And that's when you can bring in your book and the story of Layla and Alan, and so that's how you do social media. Is away from the book until you get a chance just to kind of mention it in passing.
Right. And that part I really get. So that I think that's what ended up being the time suck for me, because I would spend time, looking at other people's, Facebooks and, interacting and trying to find things to connect with people about. And I end up spending, before I know it, an hour and a half has gone by.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
And especially when you have something like LinkedIn, which has so many opportunities to connect to people, and I really get lost in that one. And I'll find myself saying yes to, let's get together and let's have a short conversation. And then I go my merry way on the rest of social media and totally forget that this person wanted to meet with me. So I'm like, I hate that makes me look like I don't even keep my word or anything. So yeah, it's tricky. Social media is very tricky. And of course, Amy, the one, she and I worked together for years, and she's just the master at it, because a lot of social media is a waste of your time. So if you can focus on what is beneficial to you and which one, I mean, if your audience is going to be on Facebook, or are they going to be LinkedIn? So if they're more professional, you're going to be LinkedIn, and you want to talk in a professional manner and talk about professional topics. Where Facebook, you can talk about romance. And so that sounds like the better fit for your book versus LinkedIn. Those are all the things to work out.
And the people who come to a book signing or who want to talk to you, they're interested in you really more than they are the book.
Absolutely, that's very true.
Icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And along that vein, I saw where you had worked at a nonprofit. What kind of nonprofit? Because I have a nonprofit background also.
So this is a statewide nonprofit helping abused kids and families.
Oh, very needed. Very needed.
Yeah. Yep.
Very needed. Well, mine was, I was the managing editor of the largest publisher of Hispanic literature, which was at the University of Houston here.
Wow.
And, I learned how to deal with huge grants and, stuff like that. And I didn't like it at all.
Well, that's kind of what I do here in my position. I deal with grants and kind of a little bit of bureaucracy and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I wear many hats, but and that's kind of what I like about being a writer. Like, so I have like my admin job, my what pays the bills job, and then I can kind of move off into writing and do something that nobody's hinging on whether what my character does. Like, it makes no difference. It's just such an interesting and different thing to do is when you write rather than work. And not that writing doesn't make a difference, but when you're working and you have like these deadlines and you have, people counting on you, and, it's nice to kind of put that aside and just write. And I said to my husband just the other day, I'm like, man, I wish I could just write like all day. Like, why can't I just do that? And he says, I'm sorry.
Well, when you start getting paid for that, then that's a different story.
Well, it was the bureaucracy that just made me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah.
And I should have stayed there. I'd have had a great pension if I had have, but I would have ended up in jail because I'd have killed somebody, stayed much longer.
And then you could have written a book about that.
Well, while we've been sitting here talking, my brain is always working as far as angles and trying to figure out ways to promote stuff. And Sandy and I do a lot of brainstorming. And it occurred to me, Your book is about relationships. It's about a relationship that more or less mends itself, I'm assuming.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay. Well, it
I don't
there
want to give away too much of the book. That's the thing. I don't want to give away.
well there are a lot of blogs out there about relationships. There are a lot of relationship psychiatrists, psychologists, relationship groups that deal with, marriage and the ins and outs of it and stuff like that. I would think that would be an absolute gold mine for you to try and market your book.
Like just pop in on a blog and tell me more about what you mean, Rita. I'm sorry.
Well, if that's what they are, do pop in, make a comment on a blog and tell them that you have a book about so and so and such, and that you would, be glad to have an interview with them or, whatever.
Yeah.
Did you get a copy of the book publishers resource directory that Dina sent out?
Has she already sent them out, Rita?
She may not have. She may not be sending them out till the first of
You're going to be getting something that's a directory of, and it has blogs and podcasts and different things.
Oh,
yeah.
Everybody that submitted a book for the 2024 will get one of them.
Okay, great. Wow.
Yeah.
I know, it's wonderful.
Yes.
I'm planning to use it myself.
It's a great resource.
Yes. And that's what you want to look for, resources so you can spend some time, developing a mailing list, an email list of the people who have reviewed the book or made a comment, or people you beat or whatever, is another way to keep in touch with them. So you let them know when you have something new coming out, and then getting on different podcasts is just absolutely one right now. Podcast is the hot thing to do, and
Yeah.
so blogs are still read, blogs still go out, and they're still there, but they don't get the publicity right now that podcasts do. So anytime you can be on a podcast, submit your information, have a little blurb, you send the same thing to each one, and you'll have a list of podcasts in this directory, so you'll be able to submit, and that'll be a great way to get the word out, because just talking about it with someone asking questions really does, and people are interested in listening to it.
It's interesting too, from an author's perspective, like the author, at least from me, from where I'm sitting, like I thought all I had to do was write the book. and then yes, you write the book, but then you also have to query the book. And okay, now you queried the book, and now you then have to edit and then publish the book. And then there's the next step now of promoting the book, and then doing the podcasts and interviews and stuff. It's just so interesting. This is not something I ever thought of when I said, I'm just going to write this book and see what happens.
Most don't. Most don't.
I was going to say that you cannot believe how many times we've heard people say that. I thought I was done when I finished the book. But then you find out, well, you're just now getting ready to get started. So There's a whole new world out there.
You're going to get so sick of that book by the time you sell 10,000 copies of it, you won't want to look at it again.
Right? I mean, that was one of the reasons that I kind of put this Tanya, We Have a Problem book up on the shelf, because it was really overwhelming for me to do podcasts and interviews, and and with my regular job and trying to fit everything in. And then I used to write from 5 a.m. till 7 a.m. I was a member of the 5 a.m. book club.
I saw that on your website.
Yeah. And then it ended up being just a lot, but I'm ready for it again. I think this is a nice way to get my feet back into it. So it is a lot. It is a lot. And, but it's exciting, and it's fun. And it's just something that I have to remember when I get like that kind of anxiety feeling that I have a podcast coming up or something, that it's not.
Well, I think the secret to not getting overwhelmed or burned out is just to do 1 or 2 a week, maybe 1 a week, maybe 1 a month to start with.
Yeah.
So you get back in the groove and be familiar with it. And so everybody has that little feeling of nervousness or, not sure what to expect. But
Oh,
for the most part, I have never had an interview with anybody that was not a fun thing to do. So I think they'd be fine.
yeah. This is, I always, I always work myself up, and I think somebody's going to ask me a question I'm not going to know the answer to. And then I have to tell myself, it's your book. How are you not going to know the answer to it?
You wrote the book.
I know, exactly. Come on, Patti Lee. You know what you're doing.
And it always makes it easier, not only on the interviewee, but also the author, if the author can come up with some specific questions to be asked. We can ask all kinds of questions, but questions that you want to specifically talk about kind of takes the edge off of it, so you don't feel near as intimidated by the whole process.
That's a good point. I
That
didn't
way you know the answer too.
Yeah, that's
like getting the answers to a test. Exactly, Sandy. Yes. I love that.
So let's talk just a minute about your nonfiction work that's part of anthology.
Sure.
So tell us about the writing of that. Is that a different kind of writing? Is that easier, harder?
So that was interesting. So that came about. My friend, my best friend, who knew when I shared my writing thing with her, she sent me this email, and it was for an essay. It was for gosh, what was the name? What was that? I have it right here, but I don't have it in front of me. Hard knocks, or hard. I can't remember the name of it. Hard knocks, something like that. Like essentially, what something happened rough in your life, and write about the experience. And so I did, and that was the first essay I'd ever written, and I had sent it in, with hoping for the best, and I won that, and that was just like, wow, okay, this is so interesting. So that again, it wasn't anything. It wasn't something I thought I would do. It just, my friend sent me the link, and I looked into it, and I looked at it as an experience that would help me grow as a writer. No matter what happened, one way or the other, it would help me grow as a writer. And then when I got the email saying that I had won that competition, I was just quite shocked. And so it's a little bit of a story about essentially my life growing up, and it essentially, life lessons that you don't really expect, but you learn from.
That was one of them, and the other one was the Ward House.
Oh yeah, so that actually is fiction. So that's fiction. That was for the Cauldrons,
Cottages and Cauldrons.
Cauldrons series. Yeah. So yeah, that was just a little. They had come up with that. The Jazz House Publishing had put something out about just a short story, and I was like, yeah, I'll try that. Again, going into it with it's something different. It is kind of like a teeny bopper kind of a little short story about the Ward House, which is essentially a haunted house that people go to, like a hayride kind of a thing. And I was like, I can try that. I can see, again, going into it just thinking it's something I can learn from. Like, this isn't something that I do, and I can learn from this. And then they accepted my admission for that, my submission for that, and that was exciting too. And it was, I hadn't written anything like that before. I hadn't written anything like that before, and I haven't written since. I've thought about it. I've thought about writing something for like a middle grade, or a younger version. Like right now I write women's fiction. I'm just more comfortable with that. But there might be a point where I write, I have 4 grandkids now. Holy cannoli. But my oldest grandchild just turned 10. And so now I'm thinking maybe I can write something that they might enjoy reading. And then I have my youngest grandchild was just born on Halloween. So at some point, maybe write something that was, that something, that a younger person might enjoy.
Well, young adult is a very hot genre right now.
Yes, I know. I think ever since I don't know, Harry Potter came out, and I think everybody reads young adult now.
It's easy to read. I like to read young adult.
Well, I read all the Harry Potters because my kids wanted me to, and so I did. But I haven't read young adult since the Harry Potter series when I read that. But
We
yeah,
have,
agree.
we have a friend, Pam, and she is a Harry Potter freak. She was at every event that Harry Potter ever did. And I think Pam's older than you, Sandy. I think she's like 85 or 87.
Oh, Pam Van Scully. I don't think she's older than me.
Maybe not. Maybe not. But she loved Harry Potter, and my daughter did too. She bought it on audio so she could listen to it over and over and
Yeah,
over.
very popular in adults as well as kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think there's that, that fine line where it can go both ways. It doesn't have
So,
to.
do you see yourself as writing a series like that that would be of interest to younger adults as well as older adults?
I do. I like to try to write different things. I like to try my hand at different genres. And so I just finished Tanya, We Have a Problem. I'm working on just those final edits. And the next one I have in mind is kind of a murder mystery book. And then after that, I might do something along the lines of middle grade or,
Well, I mean, it wouldn't even have to be. It could be really an adult that you just had a series that kept going. Like we have several authors that sent in books for the Fire Awards that have a series of 6 and 7, and they're still adding to it. So I think that's a great way of getting people to buy your book. If you can get a series, if we get them started reading the series, then you sold at least that many books, the whole series to authors. And I've read a couple. One of our friends, Rita, she's the one that does the workshops on how to do your Amazon ads and stuff like that. I forgot what her name is. Used to be the head of the Authors Guild here. I forgot her name, but anyway, she
Pam?
yeah, is that her name, Pam? I was thinking Pam, but
yeah.
But I mean, she had a series of books about this person that went to all the different islands in the Caribbean and had all these different adventures in it. And after I read the first one, which I wanted to read the first one because she had it free, so that it would sell the others. And I bought the entire series. As soon as I get done with one, I go buy the next one in the series because it really was. I wanted to see what happens to her next. I mean, she just got involved in this heavy duty thing going on in one of the islands, and now she had to leave. Now what happened to her? So it was very much leading you on to the next book. So that was great. Great.
Tanya, We Have a Problem. My hope is to have that as a series.
That would be great.
The Janet Ivanovich, Stephanie Plum kind of thing. I don't know if you guys.
Oh yeah. Now that is another series that's very, very easy to get addicted to. I kind of think about being addicted to it. I'm like, I'd give up everything else instead of reading this book.
Right.
Well, Patti,
So,
this has been awesome. This has been awesome talking to you. I may have to read your book. I'm visually impaired, and is it on audio by any chance?
I don't know. I can ask James. I'm not sure. I don't have the answer to that. I'm so sorry.
If it was on audio, you would know about it.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure you would know. So you might want to put that little bug in him that, people like those books, and some of them have been married 20-something years or, getting to the point where they'd rather listen to a book than to actually read the physical book or read. I read it all on Kindle so that way I can increase the font and all that. So.
Right.
But anyway, you might want to mention that and put that bug in it.
Okay, I'll do that. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Well, thanks again for joining us. And don't forget, we upload new interviews with outstanding authors like Miss Patti Lee on Tuesdays each week.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So for more details about the Fire Awards, go to firebookawards.com. And until the next time, the next interview, keep those books on fire.